Welcome back. It's been so long.
10 minutes.
Actually, a little longer than that.
That's true. We did have the chef tasting.
We had the chef tasting.
It was pretty good, actually.
It was very good.
Yeah, it steak.
I was ready to come back for more.
Yeah, it was like a lot of variety. It was pretty impressive. Anyway, welcome back to, what do we call this? As the Walk Returns. Right, I should know the title of this now.
Hey, we're slow rolling
It's
still,
a Thursday.
remember?
We can do this. Okay.
Only one more day left.
Okay. Yes.
And then the work weekend.
The work week ends.
Starts.
Well, yeah, but we're traveling back Saturday, so not quite. We're getting there, though. It's all right. We're getting there.
I think you just kind of made the point that it is a working weekend.
I guess I better do another book.
Off. Yeah. So, so the stories. We gotta go. We've talked about Walter. We've talked about the 2 accidents. That was one accident, 2. However you want to.
Right.
I mean, at least they were 0 for 2 on injuries. I mean,
that's true. Yeah.
I mean,
that could have been way worse.
We're looking for an upside. I mean, it could have been
no injuries other than egos, and maybe some jobs.
Maybe a few scratches here and there on
lessons learned.
Yeah, on the vehicles, but oh well. So,
you want another story?
I want another story. I mean, this is my favorite part of all of this. I mean, if I'm just being honest.
Okay. All right. Well,
I just want to peel back the onion and hear
stories. Sometime this was a prior career. I worked with a variety of different owners. We're talking maybe an owner that has one community, or very savvy banking people that come in their suits and whatever. So for me, you're constantly at that time flexing to what the short-term, long-term goals of these owners are at the end of the day, and how they want their assets to be managed. And I had an owner, it was his first community, and he really didn't know what he didn't know, other than he had built homes, and I think some storage units. That was kind of his thing. So he decided...
So he thought we were pretty much in the same...
Yeah, it's the same story, and I heard it out of his mouth, and I honestly had to stop myself from laughing. He's like, I got a dream, I got a grandma, and some land. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, you're ready to go. You're ready to build a community. Great, well done. Anyway, he starts on this endeavor, and I will say he is the epitome of ask for forgiveness, not permission, right?
Okay.
May have a little bit of a short fuse. His project manager was his personal trainer, because that works, right? So I was having to... Anywho, that's not the point. The point was, he was highly focused on cleanliness, and so am I. I'm a neat freak, but to the point where we would have many conversations on phone calls and emails about his expectations on cleanliness. And apparently one day he had enough, and so he went into the maintenance director's office and took the trash can that was full and emptied it on his desk and walked out. So who gets the phone call? Me, from the executive director. I now have to manage an owner that has overstepped his boundaries and undermined the executive director, and now I've got a maintenance director really upset. So just so you know, things could be going on in the background that have nothing to do with your loved one, but they're also fighting the good fight with other people that you may never have any contact with. So yeah, that was a great day. Banner day.
Just because the trash can was...
Yeah, the trash can hadn't been emptied, and so he made it a point to dump it on his desk.
The perception was it was too full.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
That was his solution. Didn't go over well.
One would not think.
I mean, there was a point made. I don't know if it really had the impact.
It also kind of runs counter to the whole cleanliness thing.
Right.
It's like...
Right.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, he needed help. Anyway, I don't work with him anymore, so...
So we're all good.
Yeah, I learned a lot of lessons from him. So many lessons.
So, going back to the guidebook, unpacked a number of chapters. We still have more chapters to go, because apparently you were quite bored on this particular vacation. So
sure.
There's a lot of chapters there. Sorry, I just
wow.
Gotta keep going back to that one.
Okay,
so,
right, got it.
But technology needs. or maybe it's technology amenities at communities. What do families need to be thinking through? What's important, what's not? I mean, obviously you have the essentials of like telephone, TV, Wi-Fi, but then beyond that.
Well, it's funny that you say essential is Wi-Fi. I mean, to me it is. To you it is. I thought about it the other day. I'm like, why do I lose water or Wi-Fi? What would I choose? Probably water. I mean, I could go get water. But anyway, whatever. Whatever.
I mean, that's like a toss-up.
Whatever. I mean, okay, maybe power. I could deal without power, not Wi-Fi, but one needs the other. Anyway, the point is, senior living in general is slow to adapt to technology. This is not Silicon Valley here, okay? So the issue that you have in a community is that, like, if I am in a building, if in this community, at any given time, there's probably at least 20 different software systems. No joke. Between clinical, between security cameras, door openers, I mean, you name it. Ask me how many of them talk to each other. Oh, I don't know, maybe 3. You know, so the community is inundated with technology. And so it really is another huge part of the job to be able to assess what technology makes sense, not only for the internal running of the building, but outfacing, like how can the residents and the family members and even the staff benefit from this? Because bad technology, the way the staff does is they just don't use it. Right. And so you have to get their buy-in to adopt whatever you're doing. So I'm I worked for a software company for many years, and so I'm pretty mindful about hopefully screening the right people, asking the right questions, so that I'm not going to be like a beta test or guinea pig for somebody's brand new idea. But how you roll that out is like make or break on these things. So first thing you want to make sure when you go into community is, when they say they have Wi-Fi, is that like in the lobby, or like, is that in the apartment? And is it like hardwired in? Are we talking Cat 5, Cat 6, or is this like just broadband Wi-Fi? Because oftentimes the residents, if they're savvy, they may have a tablet or a smart TV, and so they're streaming things. But like this building has 371 units. If everyone was watching Netflix at the same time, that's not good. We don't have enough bandwidth coming in to be able to handle that. So I think being very clear with the community about, like, okay, what does Wi-Fi mean, and what can I expect to be able to have, for my parents or for myself when I'm visiting.
What does my family want from this?
Yeah. So if they want high-speed internet, then, how are you going to use that, bring that service into their apartment? Is that even possible? I can tell you now that most communities are not designing buildings with landlines. I mean, it's just not a thing. Like, if I look at this community, we didn't put any landlines in, except for, I think we had to do it for the elevators, I think. But that's pretty typical. So most of that's going to be voice over IP. And so what does that mean, though? That's all great when the internet's working, when you have power to the building, and then it's not so great. When you have...
Again, details.
So when you have a power failure...
That's when you have cell phones.
Sure, until you can't recharge it. So you're good for a few hours, and then things become, pretty critical. So understanding, you don't necessarily, I'm not asking you guys to get into the weeds on, like, let's say we lose power for several days. What do the generators look like? Like, what do those emergency situations look like? Because, I mean, there are communities in hurricane situations, or tornadoes, or like earthquakes, whatever. But I shouldn't say the Wi-Fi, the technology, the background of a community is quite frankly pretty important. So if you have a good Wi-Fi infrastructure, I would say that's probably like number one. Then I would look at, how do we communicate with the residents and families? The days of like calling 100 family members to say, hey, we got this going on, come for this event or whatever. No one has time for that.
Right.
That's not even possible.
Yeah.
So we've adapted technology several years ago where there's like mass communication systems. So, if we had a big event, or we had an issue going on in the building, like we had to evacuate or whatever's going on, that information is sent out via text, via email, via phone call, if they choose to do that, to whoever needs to have that information. So that to me is probably like number 2 on the list of, how are you going to tell me things in a timely manner? A lot of communities have digital screens and technology where they can understand like what's going on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to like physical pieces of paper, or we have technology.
Events, that type
like if you want, you can get in, technology in buildings where, like for us, let's say a resident's in memory support, and the daughter wants to know every single activity that the resident attended. there's technology out there that will do that as long as the staff is like putting that into the system. So again, it's only as good as the staff using it. Cameras, that's a big thing, whether it's a security camera on exit doors, whether it's motion detected or it's, whatever, but there's also cameras now. The fall detection's come a long way. And, if you're lucky enough in a care setting to have technology that will detect a fall and then send a notification to the staff saying, hey, we've got someone that's potentially on the floor, they can respond a whole lot faster. And then the nice thing is to see the video and say, okay, mom actually didn't fall. I actually had a resident that was constantly falling because she was found on the floor, and she wasn't, she was praying. So she was getting on the floor, and the staff didn't know any different. They just walk in and she was on the floor. So to know that there wasn't any potential injury, that meant that she didn't have to be sent out 911, because oftentimes residents can't communicate, like if they're in pain or where they're in pain. Right. So those kind of things are kind of fun. Access control too, as far as like not only the exterior doors of the building, but the apartments. Kind of like hotels. Like there are apps for that now, or key fobs as opposed to hard keys. There's pluses and minuses to all of that. Residents sometimes struggle, but we're always losing fobs around here, but then they lose keys, and I don't know. It's just it's never ending.
Yeah.
But I would just say the technology, as good as the backbone and as good as the staff and the residents are really able to adopt it, you still have residents that have insist on a landline, and then you have others that are I don't know, gamers, and that's cool too. So yeah.
What about like electronic charting?
Yeah, that's a big thing. So that was one of the questions I asked when I was looking for my mom. If people are on paper, that'd be like going to the hospital and someone's running, like, remember, like, you used to have like your charts at the end of the bed and everyone's like charting on it? No, everything's on tablets now and computers, and should be the same thing at the community. The only reason you should be charting on paper is if you have like a power outage or something like that and you're having to do that. Things are so integrated now that, from like the move-in process to the resident moving in to all their medication orders, their hospice orders, all that stuff is centrally stored, hopefully with e-signatures and all that, so that it's just all paperless. This community specifically is paperless, and it just makes things a whole lot easier for us to go in and audit and, review things, and it's just cleaner that way.
So you mentioned the kind of mass communication type system. Is that utilized in most communities for emergency type situations, or is it also used for like calendars of events, or is it a
both? Yeah.
Okay.
If you have a good technology system, you can have it segmented by types of residents, or like groups. Like, I only want to notify the morning housekeeping crew. You can do a group for that. Or I only want to know assisted living residents, on this floor. You can parse it out however you want. If we're going to send out a mass notification like at this community, realistically, it's probably going to go to 1,000 people. So you better be mindful about what you're sending out, to 1,000 people at any given time. So for us, we've had to use it a couple of times for emergency situations. We had there was a police chase in the neighborhood, and so we locked the building down, asked the residents to stay in their apartments, and then we would update them as the police would update us. If there was a fire or a flood, or there was a tornado warning here maybe 6 months ago, we had to shelter in place. Thank God the tornado was nowhere near us, but we did kind of, quite frankly, go through a huge tornado drill, and that's how we would use those kind of systems. But we have a big party here tomorrow night, and that would be another use to just say, hey, we've got something, please come.
Please stop by.
Yeah, and you can use those technologies too. We happen to use LifeLoop, but there's lots of them others out there where the residents can schedule transportation. They can schedule, they want to book the private dining room, or they want to have a maintenance order or whatever. Like, it's just kind of like, I was talking about the hub earlier. It's kind of like a hub technology for the residents and families.
This seems like it would be something that would be very easy to overlook, but would also be critical to how much of their daily life is impacted by it. Because I can completely and totally see someone not even, especially somebody that may be more on the IL or AL side of things, that streaming TV is like an integral part of their daily life, and then recognizing, oh, that may be a problem after moving in, without even having.
Yeah, no, it's just sometimes there's just assumptions made, right? Like, well, every hotel has that. Like, what? A house has that. Are you sure you've got that? Not everyone does, and especially like if you're in a rural or tertiary market, I mean, you may be, like limited on the infrastructure that's available in that area.
Right. Well, and especially like you mentioned, I mean, if it's a sizable community of any, just the amount of bandwidth that would be taken because of everybody potentially pulling at the same time. I mean, it's not just, to your whole point, it's not just an easy infrastructure fix.
No, and then when you have to upgrade it, I mean, the fear things we talked about was fire, missing resident, or something like that catastrophic, but you want to talk about like making the team mad? Start changing out Wi-Fi's or WAPs, or, like changing out the technology, like it just brings people to their knees. So,
You mentioned, I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but anything else that people need to be mindful of on the technology side, more on the safety aspect of it? I mean, you mentioned the fall cameras, you mentioned that detection system, but anything that you feel like is like just a baseline prerequisite on the technology side that would just be directly related to essentially safety?
Yeah, and I would say those fall cameras, you're not going to see those in most communities. I wish, they're very expensive, don't get me wrong, but that would be a luxury thing. But I would say like as a baseline, for me, like how do you secure the community is going to be pretty important. So if I show up with my mom at 9:00 at night and the doors are locked, like how am I going to get in? Like is it a keypad? Is it a fob? Is it like I got to knock on the window? Do I have to call a phone number? Like, just some of like those things that you just don't you just take for granted walking into a hotel lobby that you may not have. I would say how the staff, we talked about that, how the staff communicates with each other. Are they on walkie-talkies? Do they have apps? And how the community communicates with you is, to me, just like bottom basic. Like we have to be able to communicate things like during COVID. We have, for instance, like there's an outbreak. This is how many we have. This is when we expect them to be better. Like our staff does not have the manpower to call 300 families. Like we need to tell everyone all at once.
Because there's not just 300. I mean, there's secondary and contacts and so forth inside.
Sure. And I love my Utah buildings, but let me tell you, a lot of kids. So you want to know, get on the list, because I'm not calling all 10, okay?
Yeah.
Don't have the people for that.
But I'm assuming that what you were talking about the communication system, there's probably a communication that is both interior and exterior.
Interior and exterior, yeah. So the one that we use is both, yeah. So you can absolutely customize it to internal staff members based on department, all staff, or just residents, or just families. So it's pretty great in that respect. But you have to have something. It cannot be we're going to fax you, we're going to call you, we're going to send you a letter at this point in this industry. No way. No way.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what? There was a community maybe a year or two ago. And it was a smaller building. It was like 25 units, very nice, super high-end community. And they had a flood, and it was bad. And that executive director, they did not have the technology in place to call the families. And let me tell you, even if you're evacuating 25 residents, the amount of not only restoration companies, the home care, the hospice, the doctors, the nurses, the staff, the executive director, and they were all going to her cell phone. You cannot communicate fast enough to be able to answer everyone's questions. And what happened? The families were furious because they felt like they weren't being responded to in an appropriate manner. And that executive director was doing the best they could, but they were limited on technology.
Right.
Yeah. And the cool thing too is like if you're in the middle of a crisis, and sometimes that'll happen, the people at the home office can take over that communication and do it on behalf of the community, because they're here, like, when they were evacuating for the tornado, I needed them to get in a basement somewhere, and I will handle letting everybody else know.
And fundamentally, I mean, the staff at the community on the ground need to be worried about the crisis of the moment. They don't need to be worried about, yes, the family needs to know, and we want to let them know, but fundamentally relative to the individual resident's well-being.
Yeah.
It's handling what's going on inside the
Yeah.
walls, not outside the walls.
The communication of the staff is going to look very different than the residents and
Right.
families. It might be we are like in, whatever, like code blue or whatever.
Right.
The families aren't going to know anything like that, but our staff is trained to know, like, okay, this is what I do in that
Right.
situation. Yeah.
Awesome.
Anything
So
else?
much good stuff today. So
Yeah.
much good stuff.
Yeah, it was a good day.
So that was great. Well, as always, great to be here.
Thank you.
Great
Appreciate
to
it.
unpack all of the stuff that most people are not thinking about and helping walking them through it all. So
Yeah, great pun again. Until next time.
until next time, see you all later.
Bye.